I want to tell you guys a love story. And just like with all good love stories, it's one that is still being written every single day. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. Okay, so this is not the traditional type of love story. It's not between two people. And unlike some of the things that I have seen out there in the world lately, it is not between a person and AI. Please don't get me started on that. No, what I want to talk about is my love story with systems. And I know, you're rolling your eyes. That's so cheesy. I know, but I was thinking about this today as I was planning for this episode, and I realized it kind of actually is a true love story because it's not like I was always like this. I mean, I was always a little bit of a planner, I guess, and an organizer. I didn't like to just kind of jump into things and be spontaneous. But it wasn't until recent years that I really started to develop this love for process and systems and understanding their benefits, not only in the business world, but honestly, everywhere in our lives. So, I wanted to tell you a couple of stories and talk about some of the practical things that I love about systems. But more importantly, I want to get into the deeper reason why I love them so much, why I am so freaking passionate about it, and why I talk about it maybe a little bit annoyingly. So, the first story that I want to tell you about is from, gosh, it's got to be over 10 years ago now. I was working in the corporate world. It was honestly one of my first real, like, adult jobs. Now, I had had plenty of jobs before that. I had worked in multiple places. I'd done retail, I'd done food service, I'd even worked in a chiropractic office for quite a long time. But none of those jobs made me feel the way I did the first time I had a corporate job. Let me just start by saying that this is not a video of my love story with corporate America because I don't have one. But the reality is that being in that corporate setting, it just shifted my approach to a lot of things. It shifted my perspective, and it really put me in a situation to work with a team in a way that I never had in any of my shift-based jobs. Because honestly, when you're working in retail or in a food service situation, yes, you get to know the people who work there and you may even become friends, but you don't become a family in the same way as with a team that you work with the same people every single day and you see the same people for the same number of hours a day and all of that. It was definitely the place where my love of systems, just the seed of that began. And I think part of it is because when you're in a corporate environment, typically you're given a bunch of tools to work with, different software when you join a company like that. And, sometimes that software is helpful for what you actually need, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to get creative. And actually, this isn't the story I want to tell, but it obviously leads to why I am who I am today. At this company is when I first fell in love with Trello. And not because of the company, because they didn't even use it, but because while at the time I didn't really understand why yet, I needed a tool like Trello in my life, and they weren't really providing anything like that. So put a pin in that because we will definitely come back to that later. What I want to talk about is really system agnostic. I mean, I was working in a particular system, I was working in Salesforce, but it doesn't really matter. Point is that I worked with this guy who was like had his hands in everything in the business, right? He was out in the field a lot. He was managing a bunch of people. He was managing a bunch of jobs and work, and he just had so much stuff going on in his head. And I had tried in so many ways to help him because even though, I mean, he was doing a good job, obviously, but I could tell that he wasn't thriving in the way that I felt like he could be. I felt like he was stressed when he didn't necessarily need to be. And I definitely saw danger of things getting dropped here and there, or just him having to get bothered and harassed by people, namely me, all the time just because we needed some sort of output out of him. And he just had too many things going on that, it slipped his mind or he was focused here or whatever. And so because I had built that more family environment here, I like actually cared. And I know that sounds weird to say, it's not like I never cared about the people I worked with prior to that. But in this situation, I just cared in a different way these people became more of my family. We became very, very close. And I just felt this overwhelming desire to find a way to help him. And so I built into Salesforce at the time, I built into there a system for him to be able to kind of brain dump. Although, again, at the time, I didn't even know that term. This was before I was really involved this heavily into the business world and like understanding productivity in a more clear way. But I knew, I just instinctually knew that he needed that. And so I created these places in Salesforce, not only for him to put those things and track those things, but also so that people like myself could go into those systems to get the answers that we were typically harassing him for. Because if he was using the system, then it would already be there and I wouldn't have to bug him. You could see already the beginnings of what I'm so passionate about right now, right? So I built this system for him and, I told him, I'm like, hey, you can use this and it's going to be so helpful for you and whatever. And I'm not going to say he was resistant, but he was resistant. I mean, look, he was old school. He was, this is how I do things. And, I can handle it. I can hold all of this in my mind. It was never about whether or not he could or he couldn't. It was about whether or not it was the best option. So TLDR, I'm not going to get into the whole long story, but basically he finally started taking steps to just dip his toe in and start using it. He started tracking things and he started using task reminders and, started seeing the benefits of not only not getting harassed by all of us all the time, but like not having to remember everything because it was written down somewhere and it was written down in context. And I will never forget the day that he came to me and he just finally recognized, like, wow, why was I waiting so long? I mean, just the ability to put all this stuff down has freed up my mind in ways that I never expected. And you can imagine that feeling that I had, I felt so good being able to provide that for someone, being able to give a way for someone that I cared about to find that, I don't want to say peace, but yeah, kind of peace a little bit, because this system had become so impactful for him and just made his life and his job that much easier. This right here, plus the fact that at that job is when I fell in love with Trello, is why building my own Trello board was the first thing I did at my new job. I knew that they had Trello and I was super excited about that. But also, when you come into a new job, there's a lot of information being thrown at you. Sometimes there's a lot of requests and, can you help with this? And can you do that? Just a bunch of stuff coming at you all at once. And I knew because of the last 10 or so years that the only way I was going to stay on top of any of this stuff and not go completely insane in my first month at that job was if I gave myself a system. So that was the first thing I did. So I want to talk about, the practical things, the practical reasons why systems and processes are helpful. We've talked about all this stuff before. This is not the lovey-dovey feel-good reason why you do this. There is one, I promise. We'll get to that. But the point is that these things are important. And so I'm just going to call them out real quick. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because, like I said, we talk about this here on the channel like a lot. But number one reason, because when you track things, even the little tiny things, it helps you not to miss anything. You don't forget any tasks. And I know you're going to sit here and tell me, well, I've got my piece of paper and I've got my Post-it notes and whatever. And yes, that is a great step towards this. But Post-it notes fall off your monitor, sometimes even fall behind your desk and are immediately forgotten. Your notepad, while it can be great in the moment, is not searchable. And so that's why putting it into some kind of system so that you can search and find it later just is so helpful. Obviously, you know what system I recommend. That's not what this episode is really about, so I'm not going to get too deep into the Trello of it all. But just having a place where you know that it lives and you know what your source of truth is and you can go and make sure that you don't miss any of your tasks, huge. Practical reason number one. Number two, and I guess technically this one is a little bit of a feel-good, it's that dopamine rush that you get when you mark something complete. So even if you're still using paper and pen right now, and look, I am not at all throwing shade on paper and pen. It is better than nothing. And sometimes it is your best option. So this still totally applies. But you get that dopamine rush. Think about how good you feel when you check something off or you strike it through and you're like, yes, it's done. or you're in a system like Trello and you drag your card into the done list and you get your burst of confetti because you're using that Trello pro tip that I sent out in last week's newsletter. Either way, you get that dopamine rush. This is scientifically proven at this point, and it just inspires and energizes you to keep going and keep staying productive. And then the third practical reason is the ability to look back. You get to see what you've accomplished. You get to visualize your progress because look, sometimes progress is so minute, right? It's that 1% improvement, that 1% completion, that it can feel a little bit like nothing has gotten done and we worked all day. When you are tracking things and you're able to mark things complete, you can see, oh no, I did this, 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 and this. It also gives you the ability to, over time, review and reevaluate the things that you're doing and the ways that you're spending your time to see, have they been effective? Are they helping me? Are they beneficial in my business? Or do they need to go, right? If you're not tracking things, then it's nearly impossible to do that. You guys know that I love to bring quotes and other people's opinions and thoughts into this podcast. And usually they're more well-known people. They are, thought leaders or business mentors or things like that. And I have one of those for this episode, actually technically two, because if you remember from a few episodes back, the title of this episode is something that I mentioned before. I'll get into that in a minute. But this time I also have a couple of quotes of things that I don't even know who said them because I found them in the Reddit productivity thread. Reddit can be such a great source of inspiration and community and even just, catharsis when you're feeling stressed about something. But a quote that I saw somebody say, there's actually two of them that I loved. And I don't know, maybe they are truly attributed to someone else. And this was somebody just repeating what they had heard someone else say. I don't know. But one of the things someone said was most of the stress, frustration, and scatteredness come from trying to store all of it inside the mind. And exactly, that's what I was talking about in my first story, right? My colleague was so stressed and just trying to stay on top of everything, but it's because he was trying to store it all in his mind. And so it automatically became more scattered. Another thing that someone said in Reddit that I loved was paper is to write things down that we need to remember. Our brains are used to think. And I love that because when you're so busy trying to hold on to all of the thoughts, like how are you supposed to do anything with those thoughts? It's why I write notes. It's why you can tell I'm clearly looking at notes of things that I wanted to make sure to bring up in this episode. It's not because I couldn't technically hold all of them in my mind, but it's because I wanted to be able to think and expand on them. And if I was trying to just remember what the things were, that would be so much harder. So yeah, I have things jotted down and little notes for myself. That's how I do this podcast. It's how I do all of my videos. And the last quote that I'm going to bring in here, and this one actually is from somebody who is a thought leader in this area, David Allen. We've talked about him before. He is the author of Getting Things Done. And so if you have been studying productivity in any way, if you haven't heard of him, I don't know how you haven't heard of him because honestly, he's everywhere. If you haven't, go check out that book. But what he said was, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And that's very similar to what our Reddit user was saying, right? Your paper is for writing things down. Your brain is for thinking, for having ideas. Okay, so now we're getting to the love story part. So here's where it finally clicked for me. And this was actually pretty recent. Obviously, I was already experiencing the feelings of love for systems and all of that long before this, but the wording that I heard recently just, it really brought everything into focus for me. So I'm actually going to share a little audio clip from Matthew McConaughey's newsletter. So if you don't know about his newsletter, it's pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie, I don't check it out every single week, but when I do, I'm always glad that I did because there's always these little nuggets of wisdom. I had mentioned this a while ago, but I want to play you the actual clip here.
Write to forget so you can remember. When we hear, see, feel, or say something that we want to remember, write it down, record it right then. Why? So we can forget about trying to remember it later. Yes, our momentary inspiration may be a short-term distraction, but making the time to record it in the moment is what also allows us to be more present after we log it down, because now we can forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a philosophy that I have adopted more recently. It's why when I'm working with Trello clients, I transcribe every meeting. I specifically bought into a program that would transcribe all my meetings because then I can be more present in the conversation and I don't feel like worried that I'm going to forget something. I don't feel like I have to jot something down and then try to remember what I meant by that later. Because it happens to me in the corporate world too. Like, actually, in my current job, there are so many AI transcribers sitting in our meetings that it's almost a little ridiculous sometimes. But it really helps me stay more present in the conversation because I'm less concerned about remembering every tiny little thing. So I'm not distracted by that. So this is one of the reasons why this hit me so deeply, because I feel like it takes it out of just the practical, which, don't get me wrong, the practical is important too, as far as staying on top of things and remembering things, whether it's something that inspires you, like what Matthew's talking about, or just a task that you need to do, an email that you need to send. When's the last time you can remember when you were out to dinner with your husband or playing with your dog or your kids or whatever, and you wanted to be present in that moment, but something popped into your mind that you knew you had to remember to do? And unless you're like me and you have the same philosophy and you grabbed your phone or something and wrote it down, it was probably distracting you the rest of the time that you wanted to be present in the moment because you didn't want to forget about it. And actually, Matthew goes on to talk about how he gets grief from his family and friends all the time when he does that, when he's out at dinner with friends and something happens that inspires him. And instead of letting it distract him the rest of the time, he will grab his phone and jot a quick note down or take a little voice memo or something so that he can then stay present. And they think that he's doing it because he's distracted and he's thinking about something else. But the reality is that we don't control when inspiration strikes. We don't control when something pops into our mind, but we can control whether or not we let it distract us from where we want to be in the moment. And this is the key. This is what bridges the gap. This allows you to live in your business, the reason you started your business, so that you can be present, truly present with your family when it's your downtime, and then really, really focused at business. This is one of the reasons that we started our own business, right? Because we get to control what balance looks like. And this can absolutely be the key to obtaining that balance. Okay, so I want to end here with just a quick story. This is just an experience from my own personal life in this. It's actually not about me, it's about my husband. So you may or may not know this. My husband's a writer. He's written all different styles, short stories and screenwriting. And lately, he's writing novels. He's got one novel out already, and shameless plug, I'm definitely going to put a link in the description if you want to check it out. But he's working on another one right now, and he's right at the point where he's just doing his final cleanup, and then he's going to send it out to professional editing. And let me just give you a little backstory of historically how things go when he gets in the zone. So typically, he becomes a recluse, to the point where when he's focused, whether he's writing something new or reviewing and revising something, I will literally not see him for 9 hours. He will literally close himself up in his office and forget everything else. He doesn't stop to eat. Half the time, I don't even see him come out to pee. He's definitely not resting. I don't even know how he does that, has that deep level of focus. But it's not super healthy for a couple of reasons. One, because he's neglecting everything else that he is supposed to be focused on in the day, whether that's eating or just being present with me a little bit or taking care of our dog or taking care of stuff around the house. He just gets so hyper-focused, almost to the point of obsession. And look, the result is a great story, but that is not really the point. The point is that he needs to be able to figure out that balance. And I don't know what it was this time. Maybe it's just that my time after time after time of nagging him to use Trello and organize his thoughts and things like that, it finally got through. I don't know, because he's the kind of person, the kind of writer that just the entire story lives in his head until he finally writes it and gets it out on paper. And I don't know how he does that, because literally I could not do that. It would just be distracting me constantly. And honestly, maybe it does distract him constantly. The point is that this time he decided to finally come up with a system and incorporate Trello into his process. So I helped him design just a really simple board, a tiny bit of automation, really more for that dopamine rush we were talking about earlier. But basically, he took all of the things that he knew he wanted to go in and add into the story. And it's like a lot of tiny little things, because when you're writing a big story like that, you have to pay attention to the tiny details, right? For continuity and for good storytelling. So he took all of that, he let it come out of his brain, and he put it into Trello boards. He has checklists and all this stuff, and he had a timeline, treated this like an actual project because it is a timeline for when and how he's going to do the review and edits. And let me just tell you, as someone from the outside who, like I said, it's been 13 years almost that we've been married. I've known him for 15. I've seen him go through this process a lot. And he always comes out of it exhausted, again, with a great story, a great product, but at what cost to himself? So this time, though, he has this process, he has all this stuff mapped out already, and he's taking it in chunks. Instead of diving in and just shutting out the world for 8 or 9 hours, he's actually got a plan and a strategy. And I'm watching him this time around be so much more productive, stay so much more healthy and happy and energetic. He's able to balance like work around the house, taking care of the dog, his work that he does outside of the house, along with his edits. And he's still coming up with the same quality of storytelling, but this time it's done in a healthy way. It's done with balance, and he knows exactly when he's going to be done without having to shut out the entire world. It's kind of amazing, actually, and it's really, really exciting for me to see. It just shows me yet again the power of organizing your process into an actual defined process and utilizing systems to take on some of the load. So all this to say that if you have been feeling like you're drowning and if you feel like you're just distracted all the time and holding on to everything, this is probably the reason. And I normally don't talk about stuff like this in the podcast. I don't normally do shameless plugs for my own products and services, but I am going to do a shameless plug for the Tech Savvy Academy right now, because that is exactly what it's for. It's to help you design those processes and systems in your own business, to learn how to use different tools so that you can be even more efficient, but mostly so that you can take all that stuff that's living in your brain and put it into a system so that you free yourself up, not only to find that balance in your life, but also to find your creativity again. Because like the quotes that we were talking about earlier were saying, your brain is not meant to store all this information. That's what systems are for. That's what paper even is for. Your brain is meant to think and to come up with ideas. If you're relating to this and you feel like you could use some help here, make sure you check out the link in the description and start your first month of the Academy today. I hope you liked that video, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with a fellow solopreneur. And make sure you check out the description for links to how we can connect and maybe even work together.